All right, we are live. Good morning, everyone. I am, for the next about 20 minutes or so, am the Montgomery County Council President, Gabe Albornoz, and it is an honor and privilege to call to order the 20th Council of Montgomery County, Maryland. Today is Tuesday, December 6th, and we begin today's session by doing a little bit of reflection over this last year. I don't love talking about myself, and so our incredible Public Information Office team has produced a video, but I want to begin by welcoming all of my new colleagues here today. We are so thrilled to have the opportunity to work with all of you. I've gotten to know all of you. Some of you I've known for many years, others I've been able to more recently meet, but it's very clear that Montgomery County will be in outstanding hands over these next 4 years. And as we will see soon, the change in leadership, which I'm excited about as well, and we will be welcoming in my colleague, Councilmember Vice President Glass, as Council President shortly. But we will start with a video and I will make some brief comments afterwards, thanking and acknowledging some pretty amazing people who really helped make this last year be a success. And then I'll go over the election of the next council officers. But with that, there's a little bit of a video of a reflection that we will turn to now.
All those in favor of electing Councilmember Gabe Albornoz as the council president, please raise your hand. There we go. That is unanimous. Never forget to vote for yourself. Congratulations, Council President Albornoz.
2022 was a year of recovery and great progress in Montgomery County. I was proud to lead this council through a year of immense challenges, working collaboratively with my colleagues to push forward major initiatives to address public safety and health, as well as tackle inequities in our county to ensure that no one gets left behind.
I look forward to working with him to make progress on our entire shared agenda, including our work to fully live out our values as an inclusive community.
Like communities across the nation, Montgomery County is working to enhance public safety. One of my top priorities is getting unlicensed and ghost guns off our streets in partnership with the Montgomery County Department of Police and our County State's Attorney's Office. We went as far as we could go, given the parameters that have been laid out as the precedents that has now been set in making it increasingly difficult for local jurisdictions to keep our own residents safe. With unanimous support of my colleagues, I introduced legislation that will help to ensure we do everything possible to minimize the number of guns in our streets and in public spaces. This legislation would prohibit the possession of firearms in or near places of public assembly.
Important for us to, as aggressively as we can, enact legislation that prevents harmful weapons such as ghost guns from getting into the hands of those most vulnerable, especially our youth.
This bill follows unanimous passage of legislation I sponsored last year that restricts the sale and transfer of ghost guns to minors. This was the first legislation of its kind in Maryland, and this year, state legislators followed suit by voting to implement a statewide ban on ghost guns. I am both proud and, as a dad of 4 kids, very grateful.
Gun violence, unfortunately, is just on the rise nationwide, and we know gun violence is manifested in many different ways. We see it with suicides, homicides, unintentional shootings, school shootings, and domestic violence. We are very happy that the council has been proactive in their approaches. This is really important. We were so grateful that at a local level, they were able to step in and try to get ahead of this problem. Upon the Supreme Court decision, we are waiting for states to respond, but obviously a local jurisdiction can move a little more swiftly, and we're looking forward to seeing some tightened regulations around that issue.
There is obviously legislation at the national level that finally gives us a little bit of hope that there is a light at the end of this awful dark tunnel.
That was a great event that was in recognition of National Gun Violence Awareness Day, which is the first Friday of June every year.
We are taking steps at the state and local level to ensure that we prevent gun violence in our community.
For the last several years, the council has been really great in doing a proclamation on that day, and then hosting the breakfast was a really wonderful tribute, I think, for many of our survivors who attended, and just to really show that this is something of importance and to raise awareness about this day.
This council has also been actively engaged to ensure that policing in Montgomery County remains transparent, accountable, and safe for every member of our community. I was proud to lead the council in adopting groundbreaking legislation that fully engaged community stakeholders, law enforcement, and advocates to create a civilian board that will promote trust, impartiality, and accountability in cases of police misconduct. The council provided nearly $500,000 to support the newly established Police Accountability Board and the Administrative Charging Committee, which will help build trust and support our youth, families, and law enforcement alike in the wake of racial and social justice. As council president, one of the biggest responsibilities is leading the council through the complex budget process and putting together a well-rounded spending plan that keeps Montgomery County moving forward. Under our leadership, the council unanimously passed the county's $6.3 billion budget for FY23 and funded the Board of Education's record $2.9 billion request. This budget is one of the most robust budgets we have ever seen, with historic investments in our schools, affordable housing, green initiatives, and measures that will strengthen our economy. Altogether, the FY23 budget set the foundation for what is most important to all of us: a community with excellent schools, housing for all of our residents, strong economic development, green spaces for recreation and relaxation, safe neighborhoods, robust libraries, a community with strong public health supports, and where seniors can age with grace and dignity, a healthy environment, and a safety net that ensures food, housing, and health for all of our vulnerable residents. As the chair of the Health and Human Services Committee, I was especially proud of the investments we made in public health, and particularly our investments in mental health services and initiatives that make healthcare services more accessible for all residents.
It has been a wonderful partnership with Council President Albornoz this year and with him as the chair of the HHS committee. We've accomplished a lot with his guidance and leadership and with his cooperation. You know, when I think about the mental health issues in the county, one of the things that stands out for me is the implementation of our new 988 call center. We went from a variety of different call centers to a 988 national call center hotline that was mandated by the federal government, stood up by the state. But one of the things the council did was added some support under Council President Albornoz. And that adding of support allowed us to take that call center to 24 hours and add a text line to it, which is something that is important. It seems like a very small thing, but it is very important because the people that we deal with don't all want to talk to us on the phone. Increasingly, I text, you text, a lot of folks text, and sometimes that's an easier, less threatening way for people to reach out. One of the things that has happened as a result of that, we went live in July, and there has been a 250% increase in the number of text calls alone that has come into the 988 system. So that's available for people, and they can find it online, or they can simply dial 988 and they get to us. That 988 service is averaging right now over 1,000 suicide assessments a month, and that leads to 50 to 60 interventions a month for our residents.
If there's one lesson we learned during the pandemic, it's that we must go deep into communities and increase community trust by providing culturally competent care and meeting people where they are.
COVID-19 has been a national and global nightmare for everyone. The work that we have done in collaboration with the county council, the county executive, our partners has been phenomenal. One of the things that I'm particularly proud of is the work that council did in creating Nuestra Salud y Bienestar, the African American Health Program, and the Asian American Health Initiative, designed to make sure that our communities who were most harshly impacted by this virus actually had access to vaccines and testing equipment and PPE, hand sanitizer and such when it was available. That helped us to really address the health disparity that was clearly and made vivid as a result of the pandemic.
the Council supported the outstanding work of our minority health initiatives and programs and approved more than $12 million for the continuation of their essential delivery of services.
There have been considered efforts, particularly in the establishment of Asian, African American, and Latino initiatives. And these initiatives have focused specifically on addressing the inequities and disparities among these three populations. So I think that has made a significant change in the investments that have been made by the county, in particular by Councilmember Albornoz, have really made a difference in how we address the inequities among these populations. And in particularly when the COVID pandemic hit, the fact that we have these minority programs in place made a huge difference to the county.
We also funded multiple mental health initiatives and social services for high school students, including an increase of $3.7 million for mental health and case management services at 10 priority high schools without an existing wellness center. We also added $5.5 million to expand mental health case management and positive youth development services through the Street Outreach Network and community-based providers to all high schools without an existing high school wellness center program.
The mental health of our youth, including our youngest children, our infants and toddlers and preschoolers, has been really an urgent concern for Councilmember Albornoz, as it is for myself and my staff in HHS. Council President Albornoz, partnering with Councilmember Navarro, chose to add high school wellness centers to all of the public high schools in the county, which is a big jump for us. Those high school wellness centers are going to take some time to come online. So the other thing that they did was they added staff to our positive youth development and our street outreach teams so that we'd have mental health teams that are going into schools where there aren't high school wellness centers now, but also into communities where violence has erupted and where there's a need to try to create some peace.
An ongoing priority of mine and many of us has been addressing the most critical yet most basic needs of our residents. Food insecurity continues to be a significant need across our country, and ending childhood hunger has been a top priority during my presidency. I and the council supported an effort to provide more than $1 million to create the new Office of Food System Resiliency, and $4 million in one-time funding to continue the county's response to this need.
8.6% of Montgomery County residents, according to Feeding America, are food insecure, which means that they don't know where their next meal is necessarily going to come from, where they have to, cut corners to feed themselves. And that's 90,000 plus residents in a county of, more than 1 million. And so that's a significant number of people, even in what's defined as a relatively affluent community, that are experiencing food insecurity. And we have a responsibility to those residents to make sure that their needs are met. Council President Albornoz has been a tremendous partner throughout the entire pandemic, food, COVID. Obviously, as the former director of the Department of Recreations in the county, he was incredibly familiar with a lot of the work that we were doing early in the pandemic to keep people fed. Much of the feeding that we did was through our rec centers and similar type facilities. And so obviously he had a natural connections there. And that sort of led into really trying to institutionalize some of the experiences that we had during COVID and the lessons that we've learned through the Office of Food Systems Resilience. So he was an incredible advocate during the pandemic and obviously in ensuring that the office was going to continue after the pandemic was over.
In addition, I introduced a special appropriation to develop a county government strategic plan to address childhood hunger, which will build upon the strategies in the county food security plan and strengthen it with community feedback.
One of the things that I appreciate most about the council president's leadership is the way he turned to the community and saw the resources that we have in Montgomery County that makes it so that no child in our county should be hungry. And we have the tools and resources that we need to end childhood hunger. And his goals were ambitious, but achievable.
We can end food insecurity for children here in Montgomery County.
We have incredible inequities in our community, everything from educational attainment to health outcomes. And the council president wants to be sure that every resident has what they need to succeed and to thrive.
Investing in our next generation is the best thing we can do to maintain our county's competitive edge and prepare strategically for the future. As such, we supported the level funding of $10.9 million for early care and education and passed legislation to establish an independent early care and education coordinating entity. This organization will focus on systemic issues related to accessible, high quality, and sustainable early care and education, to empower more parents to join in the workforce, provide a solid educational foundation for children, help employers attract and retain talented people, and ensure a talented future workforce to help spur Montgomery County's economy for generations.
The early child care dilemma that has faced the nation really got put on steroids during this pandemic. And the business community really saw how important it was to have quality child care, because if you don't, you're going to lose half your workforce. And I think part of the leadership that Gabe, Councilmember Alvarez, has been engaged in is recognizing that this was not just something government was going to be able to solve, that they needed to have partnership with industry. They needed to have partnership with the providers in a different way than they had previously. They needed to have a different perspective on how the school system deals with them and how the Department of Health and Human Services deals with them.
Chairman Rice, well, it's been an honor to be a co-lead on this with you and Councilmember Navarro with the support of all of our colleagues.
Their leadership was important. And again, this is under Gabe's watch. He's the council president and directing resources and funds and leaning in on this work, I think was incredibly important. Creating this independent nonprofit was a great idea.
As the former director of the county's recreation department, I have witnessed firsthand how sports positively transforms our youth, improves mental health, and instills life skills that will help guide them on the right path.
How can we help each other meet our goals?
As council president, I took steps to further equity and opportunities for our youth in sports by introducing initiatives to expand opportunities for girls in sports.
It's time to play ball.
We funded $250,000 for the expansion of girls' sports leagues and passed an additional $100,000 special appropriation for the expansion of sports leagues that are popular with girls, increasing access for historically underserved populations. The special appropriation provides initial funding to create affordable and accessible opportunities in sports that are popular with girls. This initiative will continue the department's long-term vision of sports equity and ensure that all children and youth, especially our girls, gain equal access to recreational sports, programming opportunities, and quality sports venues.
We know the incredible benefits that sports provide to all of our children and youth, but in particular girls. It helps increase leadership skills. It helps increase so many other skills that our girls need to be successful today and tomorrow.
2022 was a year of recovery and opportunity for Montgomery County. While at times this year we have faced challenges and obstacles, I have never felt more confident about the future of our county. We have pushed forward just social policies and worked to ensure that everything is done through an equity lens. And I've borne witness to the principle that we succeed when we all succeed.
This is going to be the last vote of the 19th Council. Everyone, please raise your hands.
It has truly been my honor to serve with an outstanding group of passionate, intelligent, and thoughtful leaders, each with a shared commitment to ensuring that Montgomery County remains a world-class inclusive community for individuals to live, work, or start a business, raise a family, and age in place. I especially want to pay tribute to my colleagues who will be leaving the council this year. Council members Tom Hucker, Nancy Navarro, Hans Riemer, and Craig Rice. Each leave their own unique and lasting legacies that have truly made a difference in the lives of our residents and will help move our community and our institution of the council into the future. Thank you so much.
So they tell you when you're a parent that the days are long, but the years go fast. Well, that's true of being council president. The days are very long, but the year goes by very fast. And I want to acknowledge a few people before going on to the important part of today's business, which is the election of our new officers. And I want to especially recognize my team, starting with Joy Nurmi, Beth Schumann, Lillian Cruz, Maida Bayonet, and Chuck Short, and welcome the newest members to our team, Kristen Tribble, Jackie Rivera Oven, and Siobhan Davenport, who will be joining us in January. You all are outstanding public servants, and the work that you all did this year and these last 4 years has truly been an extraordinary journey together, and I will never, and the county residents of Montgomery County will never be able to thank you enough for your dedicated public service, and I look forward to another exciting 4 years together. I want to thank Marlene, Craig, Christine, Michelle, Sonia, Judy, and Selena, and Chris, and all of the central office and staff who make this place run and do an outstanding job every day, every year. And I especially want to thank them for the support that they showed me this past year. We had our set of challenges, as every council president does, particularly these last few months. We've all learned how to hit curveballs much better than we did before the start of this term. But it has been an honor and privilege to serve with all of you. And lastly, I want to thank my family. So as council president, you know, there's a lot of calls you got to take during dinner, at night, sometimes in the middle of the night. And the burden of all of that is really placed on my family. And so I in particular want to thank Catherine, my incredible wife, and our 4 kids for their sacrifice of me not being at home as much as I wanted to be. But their love and support really got me through this year. And of course, my mom and dad, who are in the audience, who saved us. Saved us a not so small fortune in babysitting. And to add all of it, we got a dog. So they've been helping out with Coco too. But Mom and Dad, I love you. You are why I'm here. And you've been such an inspiration in every single way. So thank you all, colleagues, very much. It's truly been an honor and privilege to serve this year. And I am excited about the next 4 years having the opportunity to serve with all of you. So with that, we now move on to the business at hand, which is the election of our council officers. Let me give you a quick preview and just a little note. This is a big transition to this council. We're adding 2 new members, and technology is always sometimes slow to catch up. And so just as I was given some grace when we transitioned from being virtual to in person, I ask that all of you give my incoming council president some grace if there are some choppy moves in the transition. We're all working collaboratively to get us through this morning, and just heads up, disclaimer on that. But what I will be doing shortly is calling for nominations, first for council president. We will then vote for the council president, and then I will call for nominations for the council vice president. And then the council president will have an opportunity to make some comments. We will then recess for 15 minutes while we formally go through the process of making sure everybody's computers are working. And we will then come back to redo our general business. So that's the way the next few minutes are going to go. So with that, I would now like to call for a nomination for our council president. I will turn to Councilmember Natalie Fanny Gonzalez to make that nomination. Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez.
Checking. Oh, it works. I am so excited and proud to nominate Councilmember Evan Glass as our next Montgomery County Council president. I first met Evan in 2014 when he and I were running for office. We lost, but we don't need to talk about that. And he stood out to me for various reasons. One of them was his ability to really listen to people. As a former journalist, Evan has brought skills to the council that have benefited our county residents. He asks the tough questions and makes informed and collaborative decisions. Evan embodies what it means to be an at-large member, as he's everywhere. I mean, that man traveled across the county from day one that he got elected. It's also why he took it seriously when residents were saying that we needed more council representation. Evan led the charter amendment that expanded the council from 9 to 11. He did this to increase diversity and representation. And here we are today, a historic moment, 6 new council members, all women, including myself, and I had to point out that I'm in Council District 6, the new council, and my office roommate, Don Lukey, in District 7. We're the only ones on the 4th floor. So it kind of worked out. So thank you for that. Having been raised by a single woman, Evan knows that strong women are the bedrock of our society. I feel I had to say that line again. Strong women are the bedrock of our society. It was no surprise that his very first piece of legislation was the Montgomery County Pay Equity Act, which eliminates the county's ability to ask for salary history. Because we all know that's a big contributor for the gender gap, and that women of color at the lowest paid are the lowest paid workers, including Black women at 69 cents and Latinas at 47 cents. As a member of the Transportation and Environment Committee, he fought for the expansion of the Kids Ride Free program. And now kids can take the bus for free 24/7. That's huge. Not to mention his ongoing work to increase pedestrian safety and his yearly town halls that bring out hundreds of people from all corners of Montgomery County to remind us that more needs to be done towards Vision Zero so people can walk, bike, roll, and drive in our streets. I know Evan will put all these leadership skills to good use in the role of president. And I had to highlight that behind a great president is always an amazing chief of staff. And I'm so proud that Valeria is part of his team because I know she's gonna rock it with every single chief of staff in this room. Finally, I have seen the hard work and the heart and soul that he puts towards his yearly LGBTQ+ Pride events. I have attended them. As the first openly gay council member and now the first LGBTQ+ president of the Montgomery County Council, Councilmember Glass continues making history and inspiring so many young people as a role model and as someone who they can see themselves in. Councilmember Glass, this community is proud of you, and I'm personally proud to nominate you as our council president. Thank you.
Wonderful. We have a motion of a nomination on the floor. Is there a second?
Yes, I would like to second the nomination.
Seconded by Councilmember Balcom. All those in favor of nominating Council Vice President Glass as Council President, please raise your hands. And that is unanimous. Congratulations, Council President Glass. And we will now call for nominations of our Council Vice President. Councilmember Balcom.
Thank you. I've known Councilmember Andrew Friedson for many years in many circumstances. First through his work at the State Comptroller's Office when I was at the Chamber, and throughout his first term as County Council member, and most recently throughout his constituent service in Western Montgomery County. During the redistricting, the communities of Poolesville, Darnestown, and North Potomac were moved from District 1 into my District 2. The community made it perfectly clear in no uncertain terms that following in Andrew's footsteps was a very big job and they had very high expectations. My colleague is widely known and very well respected for his commitment to our community and for his ability to provide the necessary resources for his district. But it doesn't stop there. Although Andrew Friedson is a district council member, he's had far-reaching impact throughout the entire county. He's committed to a prosperous, sustainable future. He works hard, he thinks strategically, and he gets things done. As a member of the GO Committee, his economic and fiscal policy expertise has been invaluable, along with his oversight and attention to detail. As a member of the Fed Committee, he's been committed to the acceleration of affordable housing production, as well as transit-oriented development, including pedestrian and bike safety. Councilmember Friedson is also a leading advocate for bringing more jobs to Montgomery County and has found innovative ways to make that happen. Throughout the pandemic, he and I worked very closely together on the Small Business Work Group, where we found real-time solutions to problems that business faced in keeping their doors open. Councilmember Friedson not only cares about our economy, but he cares deeply about the individuals and families that make up our community and make our community thrive. For these reasons and so very many more, I nominate my friend and colleague, Councilmember Andrew Friedson, as Vice President of the Montgomery County Council.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I second Natalie Fanny Gonzalez.
Seconded by Councilmember Natalie Fanny Gonzalez. All those in favor, please raise your hands. And that is unanimous. Congratulations, Council Vice President Friedson. Before we recess, there's a wonderful piece of hardware that Council Vice President Glass is going to present to me, and then we will recess. Council Vice President Glass.
Well, thank you very much.
Council President Glass.
Thank you very much.
All right, Council President Glass.
Immediate past President Albornoz. As is customary, I want to first thank you for the incredible year that you have led this body. It has not been an easy year, but it was a big one in transition, which was evident for everybody to see on that video when we first elected you on Zoom, and we thank you in person. And in that video also, you were talking about sports, and you said, let's play ball. And quite frankly, over this last year, you hit a home run. Mm-hmm. And so I just want to thank you, and as a token of our collective appreciation, present you with a gavel signifying your term as presidency.
Thank you.
And with that, colleagues, we're going to play a little musical chairs, so I'd like to entertain a 10-minute recess. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Today is Tuesday, December 6th, and we are in the 20th Council of Montgomery County, and it's good to be here with everybody. We just said thank you to Council Member Albornoz for a year of leadership. And again, I want to reiterate everything that he and his team has been able to do over this last year, getting us back into this body, getting us through an election, and getting us to this point in time. So my friend, thank you very much for your leadership. And I just want to extend my appreciation to all of my colleagues and personally thank all the voters of Montgomery County for electing me to a second term as your at-large council member and honoring me with the privilege of serving this county for another 4 years. I promise to serve with humility and dedication while also spotlighting the needs of residents from all corners of our community. I also want to thank my husband, Jason, who is here in the audience, for being by my side, for lifting me up and inspiring me every single day. And I also want to honor the memory of my mother, Mona Glass, who raised me as a single mom and instilled in me the courage to pursue my passions and the values that guide my public service. I also want to thank my team led by Valeria Carranza and Pam Luckett and David Lorenzo and Joy Champalou and Josh Lash and Dory Hightower. Your hard work is for the benefit of every resident of Montgomery County, and your commitment is brought every single day when you come into this building, and I want to say thank you. And last but not least, thank you to my colleagues, those who've returned and those who are new, for instilling your faith in me to preside over this body as council president for the next year. As we have had conversations over the last number of months preparing for this day, I will continue my priority of collaboration, making sure that we work together for the benefit of our residents, but also that we work with County Executive Mark Elridge, Governor-elect Wes Moore, all of our colleagues in Annapolis, all of our local stakeholders, and our residents to make sure that the council's work is focused, productive, and meaningful. And as we sit at this crossroads, ushering in a new legislative session, I also want to recognize our former colleagues, Tom Hucker, Nancy Navarro, Craig Rice, and I see our friend Hans Dreamer who's here. Thank you, Hans, for joining us this morning, for your years and everyone's years of service to this body and this community. And I'm also proud to continue serving alongside Councilmember Gabe Albornoz and Andrew Friedson, Will Jawando and Sydney Katz. But if I can, I'm really excited to serve alongside the 6 new members who are joining us today. Council members Marilyn Balcom, Natalie Fani Gonzalez, where did you move to? You're over there now. Dawn Ludke, Kristen Mink, Lorianne Sales, and Kate Stewart. I have admired each of you. I have seen your work. I've watched your passion and your advocacy for many years, and I'm glad to be sitting alongside you today. Together, this is the most diverse and representative council in our county's history, and we should all be very, very proud of that. And when voters 2 years ago approved the charter amendment that I introduced, expanding the size of the council to better reflect our county's beautiful diversity, I did not expect the results to look like this. But looking at this dais, the results have exceeded my expectations. And I look forward to working with each and every one of you and listening to your unique perspectives that I know each of you will bring to this body and the great work that we're going to do collaboratively to move Montgomery County forward. And this year marks the first chapter of the 20th Council of Montgomery County, and it's a transition to new leadership. And it's a new era and a new time for us all to reflect on where we want to go, but also take a look at what we have done together. We should all be proud of our recent accomplishments. We survived a global pandemic by having the highest vaccination rates in the country. We worked collaboratively with nonprofit and community partners to protect tenants and families, assist small businesses, and support our frontline county employees. We did all of this while prioritizing public health, education, and economic development. We addressed long-standing inequities that were exacerbated by the pandemic. We upheld our status as the only county in this nation to maintain a AAA bond rating for nearly 50 years. And we also passed historic legislation to address the climate crisis, public safety, and social inequities. But we all know there's a lot more work to do to make Montgomery County a fair and more equitable place. And as I take on this role as council president, my promise is to push forward social policies that are more just, ensure that our most vulnerable are healthy, safe, and housed, all doing so while setting us up for long-term success by being a responsible steward of our taxpayer dollars. And with the collaboration from the executive branch, our state and federal partners, we are going to make that happen. And we also have to address the county's persistent health inequalities and continue working to resolve them. As the council's former member on the Health and Human Services Committee and the lead for homelessness and vulnerable communities, I'm proud of our strong and continued support of the minority health programs and their work to enhance healthcare and access to social services to provide help for our most vulnerable residents. Having worked in the nonprofit sector myself, I know all too well the increasing needs and demands in our community. It's our nonprofit sector that plays a vital role in keeping our social safety net strong, and in turn, we must give them the tools and support that they need to maintain those critical services. In Montgomery County, we recognize that shelter is a fundamental right and believe that everyone should be able to live comfortably and age in place. And in the year ahead, we must redouble our commitment to making the experience of homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurring. And I'm confident that this council will also meet the moment by addressing housing stability and the diverse housing needs of our residents. I'm also committed to building upon the progress we've made toward achieving transit equity. We know that the greatest determination of a person's economic mobility is their ability to travel to school or work. And one of my top priorities since joining this council has been to increase access to our vast bus system. I spearheaded the effort to make buses free for all kids all the time, and last year we as a body made all bus fares only $1, reducing them to $1. And moving forward, I'll continue pushing for free buses for all residents because we know it's good for easing traffic congestion, it's good for those who cannot afford to own a car, and it's good for our environment. But for those who take the bus, we often know that there are sometimes dangerous roads that they walk to get to that bus stop. We've lost too many lives on our roadways, and we need to take urgent action to end these preventable tragedies. In 2022 alone, we've already lost 16 people, pedestrians and bicyclists, neighbors and friends. And we've also seen 488 of our neighbors injured while simply using our roads. I will continue working to make common sense traffic solutions a priority during this presidency so that every resident can walk, bike, and commute safely around our community. We need these generational improvements in our infrastructure so that we can enhance public transportation and enhance connections between our region's job centers, schools, and neighborhoods. And I look forward to working with the Moore administration and our state and federal partners on transportation projects that will advance modern traffic solutions, make our roads safer, and enhance regional connectivity. Equally important are the meaningful steps we're taking to improve our climate resilience, reduce our climate footprint, and mitigate climate change. We know that our frontline communities and communities of color bear the initial burden of climate change, and that our children and grandchildren will face the most damaging effects. And this past year, we made significant strides in passing environmental legislation to reduce waste and transition to clean energy sources. We opened the Brookville Bus Depot, the largest solar charging infrastructure project in the United States, which will provide renewable energy and charge up to 70 electric buses by 2026. And we passed several key pieces of legislation aimed at addressing the county's biggest contributors of greenhouse gas emissions, our building sector. And in the year ahead, we're continuing to take bold action that moves us closer to reaching our climate goal of eliminating gas emissions by 2035. That is this county's stated goal. And we recognize that the climate crisis is real and we must act like it. I'm also proud of the work that we've done over the last few years to support our small businesses and attract companies in emerging fields like biohealth and technology. And by supporting businesses and creating a friendly business environment for aspiring entrepreneurs, we're going to make Montgomery County a leader in our rapidly growing and increasingly competitive metropolitan area. We're already the 4th largest biohealth cluster in the United States, and we have to build on those successes. And one way I intend to do that is by creating a new council committee that is devoted to discussing, analyzing, and improving our economic development efforts. And that's why, working with my colleagues here on the dais, we are and have created an economic development committee, which will be able to spend more time and energy on conversations to grow our business sector, attract more Fortune 500 companies from around the country, retain the businesses that already call Montgomery County home, and at the same time, we're going to address major social economic concerns like closing the racial wealth gap, wage inequality, and reducing barriers for small and minority businesses. And in closing, by the time my tenure ends as council president, I hope to build upon all of this good work and make Montgomery County a more fair and equitable place where residents of all backgrounds can live, worship, work, raise a family, and age in place. And we're going to redouble our efforts to make sure that everybody feels welcome, seen, and safe in Montgomery County. With the increasing rise in hate and violence against members of the Jewish faith and the LGBTQ+ community, especially trans women of color, we are going to continue making sure that hate has no home here in Montgomery County. And there is no doubt that there are going to be challenges and obstacles ahead, but I believe this council is up to the task. Each of our unique perspectives and collective lived experiences is exactly what is needed at this time. And I look forward to working with each and every one of you to do the good work that the 1.1 residents of Montgomery County have elected us to do. And with that, let's get to work. Thank you. Councilmember Katz has requested to speak.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I know that's a different title for you, and you've already handled it well. And I too want to thank Councilmember Albornoz for having a wonderful year. It's hard to believe that there are only 2 people who are on this council right now who are former presidents of this council, Councilmember Albanaz, who's had that title for at least 15 minutes at this point, and myself, though I do see Councilmember Reamer in the office, in the room, who has had this office as well. Many of you might have heard me say many times that being council president is like owning a boat. The happiest days are the days you get it, and the happier day is the day you get rid of it. And I can tell you, it is a lot of work. And Jason, you're going to find that out as well. I mean, this is as I believe Councilmember Albanaz has said, this is not just symbolic work. This is difficult work. But I also have to tell you that it's I know that council president. The other day I mentioned that we've all heard the term even-handed. I believe we're going to hear the term Evan-handed. And I know that Vice President Friedson, it's going to take a second to get used to saying it that way, Vice President Friedson is going to work right along with you, and we're all very pleased about that. I have to say that I too obviously look forward to working with the 20th Council. I'm honored to work with the 20th Council. And we all have to say that we were honored to work together for the 19th and the 18th, in my case, Council as well. We proved again and again that we can disagree agreeably. We have proved that we can do work in a civil and efficient way. The public deserves and expects no less, and we will give them no less than that. Montgomery County is a special place, and I look forward to working with you, Mr. President, and congratulations once again, and Vice President Friedson, and all of our members to make certain that we can make it in Montgomery County an even, or should I say Evan, better place than it has ever been before. Congratulations and thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the pun so early in the morning.
Yeah.
Councilmember Luedtke.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm not going to be able to make dad jokes like my colleague, Councilmember Katz, but I just want to say I want to congratulate both you and newly elected Vice President, Councilmember Friedson, on your new positions in leadership for this public body. And I could tell from yesterday, and there are many folks here who we got to see yesterday out and about, in addition to the joy of spending all day with one another, that there was a lot of energy and excitement about the work of this 20th Council. And after some time for reflection, what I want to say is I view this as, now that the energy and excitement might dissipate a little bit, this is our time for opportunity, right? This is our time to work together collaboratively for the betterment of the whole. And regardless of where we are all assigned and what committees we're going to be serving on, we all have interests that expand well beyond the things that we're going to be tasked with doing on a more regular basis. So my interests will certainly, and all of ours expand well beyond that. And I think that each of us will share those interests with those who end up on those committees and go back and forth. We will advocate thoughtfully for interests of our districts or countywide for those of you who are serving that, and even those of us who are serving in districts certainly have interests that expand beyond our district's borders too, that are for the betterment of the whole. And we look forward to engaging, and I personally look forward to engaging with all of our residents on those interests. If we've done our jobs well, this public body will be making that difference that you set out to articulate of where we're headed moving forward. And that's going to require that we are working together to support one another, give thanks and acknowledge the contributions and additions that we each have to offer, the different lenses and life experiences and work experiences that we've each had that come collectively to bring to bear better on this body, and respect and serve those who need the body's help the most, and approach our work in that direction. I often, in the work that I just wrapped up at the state when I was doing cross-disciplinary training of folks on different topics, would say we need 3 C's. We need collaboration, communication, and cooperation. because we don't work in a vacuum, we don't work in isolation, and no one discipline, no one county agency, no one nonprofit can work alone, nor can we as a public body. So keep those 3 C's in mind. That's the one thing I want to leave you with. And to recognize for each and every one of us that true and powerful advocacy begins with listening and begins with reflection. So thank you, and I congratulate you both on your positions.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Luedtke. Council Vice President Friedson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I first wanted to congratulate and thank the new outgoing president. I don't know who I'm supposed to congratulate more based on all the comments that have made up to this point, but it has been a really challenging year. It's been a challenging year for the county and for our county residents. It's been a challenging year for this county council. It's been a challenging year for the country and for the challenges that we've faced, and the grace and the thoughtfulness and the compassion with which the council president had this past year. I just want to express my deep gratitude and appreciation for that. It has been an honor to serve with you, to be a colleague, to be on this body, and we certainly needed your leadership at this incredibly challenging time. And so I just wanted to express my heartfelt appreciation for what was a very challenging year, but a moment that you rose to the occasion to lead us in a really graceful and compassionate way. So thank you for that. And I want to congratulate our new president. I really appreciate your partnership and collaboration, the 3 C's. I look forward to working together with you. You really did help shepherd us to this moment, the moment where we have this incredibly exciting, dynamic, representative, and diverse 20th County Council. And I'm not sure that we would have been at this moment without your leadership, without your ability to reach into the community and really understand what people are asking for and what our residents are looking for. I think you bring a unique ability to do that, and I personally appreciate your collaboration here. Look forward to partnering with you for what is going to be an incredibly exciting year with a terrifically talented group of colleagues, and it is going to be a year of transition in many ways, and I know you're the right person to lead us through that moment. So congratulations to you, Mr. President. I look forward to partnering with you and working with you, and I am incredibly excited for what this 20th Council is going to do. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I look forward to working with you as well. Councilmember Mink.
Thank you, Council President Glass. I want to congratulate Council President Glass and Council Vice President Friedson on your election, and I look forward to your leadership. I, like my colleagues, am filled with hope about the good work that we will do together on behalf of our county. And I'm hopeful, too, that we will also find ways to improve how we do that good work. And so I want to speak about something about which I think that we're all in agreement, but I think it's important to name. And so after the election, when I became privy to more of the council's inner workings, I was surprised to learn that there are some processes which predate our current council and the current and outgoing council leadership that can, in some instances, remove some debate and decision making from the public eye. And I know that we have talked about this, and this is something that is a shared concern amongst all of us. So I'm speaking about polls taken in various manners that could be treated with the same finality as a vote on the dais, without as much public debate or oversight. That process can allow for marginalized voices to be further marginalized. It can exacerbate racial and other inequities. I know that breaking the status quo is hard. We all know that it takes courage and effort, but I think we are all in agreement, and I'm grateful to say that I believe we are all in agreement that it is the right thing to do, and I believe that we are up to that difficult task together. I am optimistic that moving forward together, this historic and historically diverse group under our new council president and vice president will make it a priority to find new ways to bring increased transparency and equity to this body. And so I'm grateful to be here with my colleagues, with our new leadership, and I look forward to the good work that we're going to do together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Mink. I really appreciate those comments. I remember it was just 4 years ago joining this body, seeing how things worked and seeing how things needed to be improved, and spent the last 4 years with my colleagues who've returned to make refinements, all in the effort to bring more transparency and efficiency to all of our functions. And so I look forward to working with you on those. Thank you. Councilmember Jawando.
Thank you. Good morning. Former Council President, immediate past, the favorite spot on any board. Congratulations. Thank you for your service during what was a series of unprecedented years. I know it's very difficult, so thank you for everything that you've done. You did a great job. You steered the ship well, and thank you. Congratulations, too, to our new Council President and Council Vice President on your election today. And really excited to serve with all of my new colleagues. Really, congratulations to you. I agree with the comments that have been made. I think this is an exciting time. Anytime you start a new council, you can do things differently. There's hope and promise and opportunity, and I feel that same way today. I do want to underscore the comments of my new colleague who's sitting in my old seat, actually, Councilmember Kristen Mink, about need to reform these processes that are behind the scenes. I think, unfortunately, it's been my view over the last 4 years that marginalized voices, whether they be ideologically, racially, ethnically, do not benefit from behind the scene processes, and our public doesn't benefit from it. This process of deciding who our next leadership was going to be was one of those processes. And while we laud properly the most diverse council in our history, the leadership that's been elected and is proposed in the committees doesn't reflect it. That's disappointing to me personally and individually, but also for our county. And I think just 2 weeks ago, or a week and a half, it's all running together, we had a discussion about our council rules of procedures, which were passed out this morning. And one of the proposals was to remove the authority of an individual council member to introduce a special appropriation if they see a need in the community, and that you would be required to have 4 council members to do so, something that has never existed. There was debate and discussion in the previous council, and it was removed and lowered to 3 council members. I think that's something we need to revisit. It's an example of, if I, for example, as the first African immigrant council member, or anyone who has a unique insight into an individual need in our community wants to put forward a special appropriation, they have to, behind the scenes, out of public view, ask for permission to even introduce an item and have it discussed. I think it's another example of the trend, unfortunately, that I've seen over my last 4 years that we need to reverse, of removing conversations from public view and putting them in the back room, which is where transparency and democracy goes to die. So while I'm excited and look forward to serving with my new colleagues, I hope that we will take this moment also as a chance to reform and renew these practices so that it can serve our public and all of our communities better. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Jawando. I have had the pleasure of working with you over the last 4 years to introduce a number of reforms, whether they were procedural reforms or internal reforms that are purely administrative ones. I look forward to working with you on some of these as well, but I just want to make it very clear for everybody who is following the work of this brand new 11-member body that by creating a brand new Economic Development Committee, we have created another leadership position. So of the 7 committees that this council now has, 5 are led by people of color, by women, and by LGBTQ plus council members, the most diverse leadership structure that this council has had, reflecting the most diverse council this body has ever had. And I'm proud of the collaborative efforts that have made that possible. And with regard to the rules of procedure, I welcome conversation and debate at a more appropriate time, maybe not on the first day, so that once we all sit down and we can have conversations as these meetings and hearings have taken place. But there are always ways to do better. And just to recall the conversation that took place with the last council when these rules were adopted, the reason that the special appropriations rule change occurred was because it was a majority support of the body to make sure that we were making sure that we were good fiscal stewards of our budget. And that is why 3 council members are currently required to introduce special appropriations, because we want to make sure that we do right by all of our residents. And that means taking care of their needs, but also taking care of their tax-paying dollars. And if people have questions or concerns about that, I look forward to bringing that up to the council so that we can have another robust debate. Councilmember Sales. No.
Thank you. I too want to echo the sentiments of my colleagues. I want to also take a moment to thank the voters of Montgomery County for electing this diverse body. I want to congratulate our outgoing president for a remarkable year in keeping us safe and chairing Health and Human Services during one of the most trying times of our lifetime. I also want to congratulate incoming president, Councilmember Evan Glass, and also congratulate Councilmember Andrew Friedson. You know, coming in as the newest member of the at-large body, I have a lot to learn and appreciate the guidance that we will receive moving forward. While the new leadership doesn't reflect the diversity of our, our community, I know that we all will be able to play a role in ensuring that diverse voices are heard throughout each of our now 7 committees. While the structure is not what everyone intended it to be, I know that we will all be able to work together to ensure a transparent and fair process where all of our residents feel like they have a voice, all of the residents that elected us to serve and represent their voices on the council. And so I look forward to working with our new leadership, our majority women council members, and the veterans to ensure that we're moving forward in a unified manner, and that transparency and accountability is an undercurrent of everything that we do. And so I want to thank everyone for their continued support and look forward to getting work done. Thank you.
I look forward to getting work done alongside you. Anybody else have any comments before we move on? Not hearing any, let's go to general business. Madam Clerk, do you have any agenda changes or announcements?
Good morning, Council President, Council Vice President, Council members. Yes, I have a few brief announcements. The first is the Council is seeking applicants for the vacancies on the Montgomery County Planning Board. The application deadline is January 13th, 2023 at 5 p.m. Agenda item number 4, state legislation, is going to be a work session and action. And agenda item number 5D, the confirmation of the county executive appointments to the Countywide Recreation and Parks Advisory Board. Julian Olin has withdrawn his name from consideration. We received no petitions this week, and so that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, moving on to our first interview of the day. It is with the County Executive's appointee to be Deputy Director of the Department of Housing and Community Affairs, Mr. Scott Bruton. Good morning. I don't know who wants to make the introduction. There you go.
I'll start. Thank
Sure.
you, Council President, and congratulations, Council President Glass and Vice President Friedson, and congratulations to all the members. On behalf of the County Executive, we are looking forward to working with you. I think I got this right. With collaboration, with communication, and with coordination. So thank you for the opportunity. And thank you for the opportunity today on behalf of the County Exec and the CAO. Wanted to introduce Dr. Scott Bruton, who is the County Executive's nominee for Deputy Director of the Department of Housing and Community Affairs. Dr. Bruton has a history of working in housing, including as a Vice President and Senior Vice President for Housing Policy Research and Development at the Coalition for Nonprofit Housing and Economic Development, as well as at the as a Program Coordinator at the Housing Counseling Services, Inc. We appreciate the consideration. Look forward to your questions. I want to turn it over to Director Nigam.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Asim Nigam, Director, DHCA. First of all, congratulations to the Council for the 20th Council session. This will be exciting times for the county. I'm here for the moral support for Mr. Bruton here. I know once the Council approves his nomination, he'll jump right into the things and keep things moving forward at DHCA. So we are looking forward to his expertise. So I'm very excited to have him join DHCA team, which I'm very, very proud of. So with this, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Bruton.
Mr. Bruton, you want to make some opening comments?
Good morning, Council President Glass and Vice President Friedson and council members. It is an honor and a privilege to be nominated.
Do you mind pulling the microphone a little closer
sure.
to you? There you go.
Sorry,
Thank you.
one of the disadvantages of being tall.
I wouldn't know, but.
No, it's an honor and a privilege to be nominated for the position of Deputy Director for the Department of Housing and Community Affairs, as well as to be the first appointee to be considered by the new 11-member council. I thank you for considering my appointment. As a resident of Montgomery County for nearly 10 years, I look forward to using the knowledge and experience I have gained over my 20-year-plus career in affordable housing and homelessness prevention to benefit the community in which my family and I live. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Bruton, I have a series of questions I'll ask you, and then if any of my colleagues want to ask any of their own, I welcome you to reach out to me. So, Mr. Bruton, the position of Deputy Director was recently created. What is your understanding of what responsibilities will be and what programs that you'll be focusing on?
Thank you for the question. Based on discussions with current and former DHCA employees, the role of the Deputy Director is to oversee policies and implementation for the department and to assist the Director in guiding all DHCA programs, to support the strategic objective of addressing housing cost burdens of county residents. If confirmed as Deputy Director, I would focus on assisting multifamily lending programs to establish priorities, goals, and relationships in support of creating dedicated affordable units. I would also focus on supporting the MPDU program administration in the application of current requirements and in developing support for the creation of additional dedicated units. Further, would focus on representing DHCA in the county with the affordable housing industry and community organizations on a range of issues and policies, including the development community, the Purple Line Coalition, Montgomery Housing Alliance, and Action in Montgomery. And I would also work with the county executive and council to develop and implement any new programs that you all would wish to add to the county's toolkit.
Thank you for that. Second question. How do you think you can leverage your previous work experience, such as your position at the Coalition for Nonprofit Housing and Economic Development, to improve opportunities for moderate and low-income county residents seeking home ownership and wealth building opportunities?
Thank you for the question. My experience with the Coalition for Nonprofit Housing and Economic Development, or CNHED, includes collaborating with residents, the community development field, government agencies, and elected officials, such as yourself, on policies and programs to support a range of priorities, including home ownership through the provision of credit counseling, home ownership training, down payment assistance programs, similar to programs in Montgomery County, such as the Montgomery Home Ownership Program, Mortgage Purchase Program, and House Keys for Employees. Also, I worked on the conversion of multifamily rental properties to cooperatives or condominiums through assisting tenants with the exercise of their opportunity to purchase program rights, which are similar to Montgomery County's right of first refusal program, as well as the mission of the Office of Common Ownership Communities. Further, I worked on affordable housing preservation and production through funding for acquisition, critical repairs, and permanent financing loan programs similar to Montgomery County's Housing Initiative Fund and Affordable Housing Opportunity Fund. And I worked on programs that require affordable housing in new multifamily developments, similar to Montgomery County's moderately priced dwelling unit program, which was the inspiration for the district's program and many others around the country. Further, I would use my experience in DC and other jurisdictions to help DHCA, the county executive, and the council to take a fresh look at each of the programs that I mentioned to determine if they could be revised or expanded to increase home ownership and wealth building opportunities. Further, because of my research background, I would research innovative and successful programs and strategies in other jurisdictions across the country for DHCA, the county executive, and the council to consider adding to the council's existing tools.
Thank you for that response. Next question is, the council is very focused on code enforcement and conditions in rental housing, and in supporting tenants and improving ways tenants can advocate either as individuals or in tenant associations. Can you share with us your views about tenant support?
I greatly appreciate this question. This is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. Prior to my time at CNHED, I provided direct tenant technical assistance services to DC tenants as an employee of Housing Counseling Services, a nonprofit community-based organization. I worked with tenants, property owners, and government agencies on remediating housing code violations and with tenants who are exercising their right of first refusal to choose the ownership entity for the property in which they lived. Based on my direct service work with tenants, the policy and program collaborations that I facilitated between tenant advocates and housing providers while at CNHED, and my role in forming the DC Healthy Housing Collaborative, I know well that housing is a social determinant of health, and that housing code enforcement and tenant empowerment are key mechanisms for improving public health and equity in the county. The county has a strong model for inspection and enforcement of housing code requirements that relies on tenant engagement and complaints to identify issues. The county's increase in the number of housing code inspectors, the use of proactive inspections to label different levels of problems with housing, and reliable follow-through to confirm remediation are all important, as well as is the transparency added by having housing code violations being able to be easily looked up on the internet through an online database. These are all positive developments. The system for reporting and remediating housing code violations could be improved through greater collaboration with trusted community-based organizations such as CASA, LEDC, Action in Montgomery, and Renters Alliance to help tenants understand their rights and how to process housing code complaints. These actions could improve enforcement outcomes, public health, and equity in the county.
Thank you for that response. Can you describe your experience in development of housing at the local level, including how you helped resolve complex land use and policy decisions?
Yes, my pleasure. For the past decade, I have worked collaboratively with DC elected leaders, agency staff, housing developers, tenant advocates, supportive service providers, and community members on a range of affordable housing and homelessness prevention policies and programs. At CNHED, one of my primary roles was to convene and support these stakeholders in short and long-term working groups, some lasting just weeks, others for years. to develop consensus recommendations on a range of legislative, regulatory, policy, programmatic, and budget initiatives. These collaborations produced an array of successful outcomes. Please, my apologies for the list, but I think many of these will be relevant to you all and the priorities of Montgomery County. Including expanding and refining the DC's version of the MPDU program, inclusionary zoning, improving tenants associations' ability to successfully exercise their right of first refusal at the property they live, strengthening DC's rent stabilization program, as well as getting rid of some loopholes, improving the application process and increasing funding for DC's down payment and closing cost programs, significantly increasing funding for DC's affordable housing financing programs. Think of these for large multifamily properties. Revising the process and criteria and transparency for DC's notice of funding availability, the way that they distribute federal and local affordable housing funding. Preventing displacement and loss of affordability by tracking and developing intervention strategies for existing rent-regulated and naturally occurring affordable housing properties. Revising the DC Comprehensive Plan to include additional provisions to encourage the creation and preservation of affordable housing, and integrating and increasing funding for DC's homelessness prevention and affordable housing program to help people exiting homeless move into safe, stable, and affordable housing.
Thank you very much. I only have 2 questions left. If appointed, how would you position this role to work on racial equity and social justice issues?
Thank you. This is an incredibly important question for folks who work in the housing field and in homelessness prevention. I believe that all aspects of DHCA's work must be driven by goals to achieve greater diversity, equity, and inclusion. I look forward to learning more about the diverse communities that make up Montgomery County, as well as past efforts to achieve racial equity and social justice by the county. I also look forward to collaborating with the county's Office of Racial Equity and Social Justice and the Office of Community Partnerships to better understand their missions and goals. It is important for the county government to work internally and externally among our diverse communities to develop shared understandings of racial equity and social justice, and to formulate clear and actionable goals for progress in these areas. In this vein, I would strive to increase diversity of input on policies and programs by expanding stakeholder engagement with communities of color. I would also work to increase understanding of and dedication to addressing equity, not just equal opportunity, to focus actions on closing gaps in outcomes, and to devise approaches to proactively support households and communities. These efforts would include reducing housing cost burdens for the most burdened households, as cost burdens fall most heavily on people of color, supporting down payment assistance and home buying readiness, and tracking subsidized and naturally occurring affordable housing to inform strategic decision-making about when and how to intervene to preserve affordability and to protect low-income communities from displacement.
Thank you. Last question. Are there any potential conflicts of interest that you are aware of?
Just one. I'm a member of the board of directors of the condominium at which I live. The condominium associations are regulated by the Commission on Common Ownership Communities, CCOC, which is under the purview of the deputy director. On the advice of Moose Cobb, the chief counsel on the Ethics Commission, if appointed, I would recuse myself from any matter that directly involves my condominium association.
Thank you for the candor. Of all leadership positions I've had, the one I've declined most often is HOA. So,
Second.
Thank you.
It's an important community service.
No, absolutely, absolutely. So we have a question from Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you, Council President. Gotta get used to that. Thank you for coming today. I was very impressed by your resume, and you mentioned today your experience specifically around opportunity to purchase policies. And I just wanted to lift that up because I think you were a bit modest in some of your responses. In Tacoma Park, in my role before becoming a county council member, we've did a number of projects like that. Most recently with Della Lorg Charcudian, we did a project on Lee Avenue with the Leland apartment residents in which they were able to purchase their building and create and turn it into a co-op. This preserved affordable housing for the residents who otherwise would have had to move out of our community. We have a number of people who had children in the schools, people who have lived there for many years. And so preserving naturally occurring affordable housing is such a top priority. So this, as you know, is a really difficult reality for residents to face, for tenants who are seeing this, their apartment, their home being sold. And we need more opportunities like this across the county. And so I just wanted to give you an opportunity, because I know this is an area of expertise for you, to talk a little bit more about how you see this possibly fitting in and creating more housing security in our county.
Thank you. As you said, this is something that I've had a lot of experience with. I first encountered an opportunity to purchase programs as the president of my tenant association when I lived in the District of Columbia over a decade ago. And I learned about the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act through taking my tenant association through the process of deciding how to dispose of our building. I then, for 3 years, worked for Housing Counseling Services, and part of my work was to assist tenant associations in understanding the complex process and navigating it. And I helped several dozen tenant associations from 4 units on up to nearly 900 navigate the process. During my time at CNH, at the Coalition for Nonprofit Housing and Economic Development, I spent a significant amount of time assisting advocates and affordable housing developers and the district in trying to protect this longstanding program, in trying to refine it, to make it more effective and to increase the success rate for tenants choosing this option through legislative amendments, increased funding, increased technical assistance, things like that. And then, because of this experience, I've been asked by jurisdiction states and and municipalities around the country, by legislators and advocates, to provide advice. I wrote a report for the city of Minneapolis, providing them with options they could choose from if they were wanting to create such a program. And then I've also provided advice to a variety of municipalities and states around the country on how to understand the range of such programs that exist in the country, as well as those that are borning in different jurisdictions.
Thank you. Mr. Burton, as we're talking about tenants' rights and renters' rights, I just want to acknowledge Delegate Janelle Wilkins, who's a fierce advocate for those issues in Annapolis, and thank you, Delegate Wilkins, for joining us. Next up, Councilmember Luedtke.
Thank you, Mr. President. You talked about the strong model that Montgomery County has for enforcement of code violations and issues. But unfortunately, and this has been my experience in multiple content areas, a strong model doesn't always equal functionality, right? And I'm not expecting you to have gotten to the weeds on this yet, but just based on your experience and your prior work, what would you say are the types of things that you would be looking at to better ensure that what's on paper is functioning in practice to a higher level here for our county?
So, thank you. Another very important question. As you say, I haven't gotten into the weeds, and I'm not as familiar with the inner workings of DHCA's inspection program. That said, based on my experience working with tenants and as well as working with housing providers, some of the key aspects of a successful housing code enforcement program are tenants being educated and knowing their rights and their protections so that they feel comfortable if they do have a housing code violation or if there are things that they suspect are not right or illegal going on with their housing, that they know whom to contact and how to go about the process and can do so without fear of retaliation. Also, it's important for the housing code provider as well as the tenant to have fair and non-partial inspectors doing this work. I've heard that the inspectors do quite a good job, but I look forward to learning more about it. But as you say, the process is only as good as its follow-through. Both the initial inspection, but also more importantly, the follow-through to make sure that remediations of existing housing code violations have occurred. And also in supporting the tenants or the housing code provider, the housing provider in providing confirmation on whether these things have happened or not. And as I mentioned in answering the initial questions, this is not just an enforcement issue, this is also a public health issue because housing is not just a commodity, it's also a service. And just as we regulate doctors or restaurants, we are trying to make sure that the people who partake of this service are doing so in a way that is healthy and stable.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for being here. I read your very detailed resume, and what really caught my attention was right at the beginning when you talked about homelessness. The reality is that we're having a housing crisis, and anybody can end up homeless in this nation. Anybody. Could be, your spouse dies, and you're by yourself with 3 kids, and all of a sudden you have a mortgage to pay, medical bills, and you don't have any money, and then you could end up homeless. Anybody can go through that. And it's about also changing the perception of who can end up homeless. I think that's very important. I'm wondering if you have done any work at the regional level on homelessness. Just because a lot of folks throughout the United States, not just in Montgomery County, but especially in big cities, they see homelessness like, well, this is my city or this is my county, and these are the programs that I'm gonna offer. But the reality is that it should be seen as a regional effort. Anybody can be homeless in Prince George's County and come to Montgomery County, and vice versa. Or people in Virginia, a locality in Virginia, can say, we have 0 homelessness, but that actually means that their homeless people came to our county. So I'm wondering if you have done work like that, and if not, what's your ambition? Like, what are the things that you're planning to do to tackle that area? Also, the rental assistance program, I truly care about the most vulnerable communities because that's my community. You mentioned CASA a moment ago, somebody did, and that's my alma mater. I came from CASA. And the reality is also that sometimes we could have the money, but we don't have the people to work on those backlogs to make sure that people who need it get it on time so they cannot be evicted. So any strategies that you may have using technology, I don't know, to really make sure that we're leaders on this area, I'll be more than happy to hear you speak about those issues. Thank you.
Thank you. It's an excellent question. Tying it into some of the other questions I've been asked, and to directly answer, I have not worked directly on regional integration of homelessness services. Part of the reason for that, as you well note, is there is not a lot of regional integration on homelessness services, and I'm sure somebody's going to tell me I'm wrong about that. But I can say, based on my strong ties to the district, connections that I have in Northern Virginia, and then hopefully the work I'll be doing, if you all confirm me, in Montgomery County, I hope to bring one of the strengths I've had in DC, which is understanding the integration of the many different programs that contribute to whether or not people become homeless. I don't know if any of you all have read Matthew Desmond's important book, Evicted. I think that book, published in 2016, I think it won some awards, was really important in the nation in helping people understand that eviction was not just a punctuated event that happened and then people moved on. It has cascading impacts on those who, you don't just get evicted. There's a long process before you get evicted of many different things. It could be medical bills, it could be, you know, death of a spouse or family member, loss of a job, all kinds of things. And that by the time you get to eviction, things are really quite bad. And then once you're evicted, there are so many laws and processes in our country that stigmatize those who've been evicted and make it that much more difficult, as with those who were formerly incarcerated, to become, you know, members of society again and not to have, you know, these things follow them around. And so to me, it's very important to think strategically about how affordable housing, housing code enforcement, public health, and you know, rent supplement programs all work together in an integrated way to prevent people from coming to the point of eviction and then coming to, you know, like, and then as many who go through eviction, coming to the point of homelessness. And there's the moral aspect of this and ethical responsibilities to our fellow citizens, but there are also, for those who look at the bottom line, it's much more cost effective to make earlier interventions than to help people become stably and healthily housed after they've been evicted and become homeless.
Thank you. Last question is from Councilmember Sales.
Thank you, President Glass. So, Mr. Bruton, thank you so much for all of your thoughtful answers to all of the questions. I, too, was very impressed by your breadth and depth of experience, especially when we're looking at technology to provide more awareness and more accessibility to our residents. I wanted to know more about the Housing Insights platform that you referenced and how you would measure success with the DHCA, community outreach, with improving infrastructure, with increasing the infrastructure that we need, and how could we use technology to hold ourselves accountable and evaluate our success?
Thank you for asking me that question.
You're welcome.
I get to talk about one of my favorite things that I worked on while at the Coalition for Nonprofit Housing and Economic Development. So in collaboration with Urban Institute, I facilitated or ran something called the DC Preservation Network. It's been around for over a decade, and what it does is it meets monthly to track federally and locally subsidized housing in the District of Columbia. And those who meet are government officials, housing developers, tenant advocates, legal service providers, and it brings, as well as, you know, regional HUD representatives. And what it does is it brings together the information from those in the government, those in the development field, with those who are on the ground directly working with tenants. And so many times, tenant advocates and legal service providers will know something's going wrong at a property or will hear about things. And so affordability can be lost when a property owner decides to opt out of a subsidy. It can also be lost when a property goes up for sale and the new owner decides that they don't want to be a part of it or wants to take a property up market. And unfortunately, it can also be lost through just negligence and deferred maintenance, letting properties deteriorate, which then can cause displacement. And so we would track all of those things. As you probably know, DC also has rent stabilization. And so we did a lot to track rent stabilized properties and issues with laws and regulations, as well as practices that could endanger the rent stabilized status of properties. and to get to the technology aspect of this. So we kept a running catalog of these properties, and then several years ago we received money from the MacArthur Foundation through Living Cities to create an online catalog, which we call Housing Insights. I encourage you all to check it out if you'd like. It's open source, so it can be adopted by municipalities anywhere. And what it does is it maps all of these properties and puts them in their community context. So there are overlays for transportation routes, grocery stores, access to banks. So like dealing with food deserts. Like access to community banks, schools, other community parks, things like that. But also there are overlays for the American Community Survey and census data, so that you can look at the demographic information. And I think, if I were to be confirmed, I think it would be really interesting if DHCA doesn't already do something like this, to start this kind of tracking, or to, if it already does, to expand it, because it can really help when you're trying to decide how to use the scarce money that you put aside for these important purposes, how to be strategic when you are deciding which properties to invest that money in to preserve affordability and to prevent displacement by retaining of these communities. And I think that kind of data and information, because it's also publicly available, anybody can look at it, like reporters, council members, members of the community. It helps to create transparency and democratize decision making, because lots of people have the tools to help contribute positively and in an informed way to these debates.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Bruton, thank you very much for being the first real official act of this new council. I would say, very excited to hear more questions from my colleagues. So we will deliberate, we'll soak this in, and I look forward to moving this forward at the appropriate time. And Director Nagam, thank you
very much.
And Mr. Weissman, thank you as well.
Thank you. Thank you all so much.
Okay, colleagues, I'm just going to do a time check. We are 45 minutes behind the agenda, but that's okay. It was a big day, big morning so far. And next up, we are going to have an interview with Mr. Richard Melnick to serve or continue serving on the Board of Appeals. Good morning, sir. And just hit your button in front of you on the right-hand side. Excellent.
And I found the right button.
No, it's all good. And for context, everybody, we are having conversations about 2 vacant spots on the Board of Appeals today. And the conversation with Mr. Melnick is for the non-democratic seat. And Mr. Melnick has been serving a partial term and is here because he'd like to serve a full term.
That is correct.
So, Mr. Melnick, my first question for you is, why do you want to continue serving on the Board of Appeals? And it's not a trick question.
I want to begin by congratulating you, Mr. President, Councilmember Glass, as well as Councilmember Friedson, on your elections as President and Vice President to the County Council. And I want to congratulate and welcome all the council members from the recent election. And I look forward to and am excited to see you all work together as you begin your time together. So as I begin with that, I will respond to your question, President Glass. Thanks. The reason I want to continue to be on the Board of Appeals is the importance of the rule of law and due process in a quasi-judicial body as well as a judicial body. And obviously, the Board of Appeals has quasi-judicial functions, and it's important that the public and everyone involved with the Board of Appeals has their day in court, has knows that there is due process, there's fairness, there's equity in the decisions, and there's a process that the people understand why the decisions are being made. Not everybody's going to be happy with the decision, but everybody should be able to understand why that decision was made and appreciate the efforts and professionalism of the Board of Appeals in making that decision. So in the spirit of fairness, the importance of having everybody on all sides have the opportunity to be heard, The teamwork in working with the director of the Board of Appeals and the staff members, as well as the other panel members, I appreciate and enjoy. And I also stress and understand the importance of preserving the record, establishing the findings of fact and conclusions of law that are necessary in reaching a decision and explaining the reasoning behind a decision. I've served on the Board of Appeals the past 2 3/4 years. I'm currently the vice chair of the Board of Appeals, and as part of that role, I ensure that the record is maintained and preserved in an appropriate way, and that exhibits are brought in that are important and necessary in order to prove some of the facts that the different participants are trying to convey during the proceeding. And I want to continue to serve and to continue to bring the professionalism, the due process, fairness, and equity to the process in hearing and deciding matters. In a board that truly addresses issues that hit people at home. And because of the land use issues, I want to continue to have the public have faith, confidence, and trust in the hearing process, and know that they will have decisions that are conveyed and reached in a consistent manner with the law and the comprehensive master plan.
Thank you for that, and you've alluded to the next question or your responses. What in your background prepares you to continue service on the board?
I've been an attorney for 37 years, 30 plus of which was with the Montgomery County Attorney's Office, during which time I handled litigation, negotiation, mediation. I was the unit leader for the contract, commercial, law and procurement unit of our office. Dealt with a lot of procurement issues and bid protests and dealing with exhausting the administrative remedies that are stated in the county code and county regulations. I also appeared before the Board of Appeals on numerous occasions and represented the Board of Appeals at times in that capacity. I then went on to become the city attorney of the city of Annapolis. I handled a lot of zoning issues. Zoning issues are important to the city of Annapolis. There's definitely a lot of advocacy that goes on between different litigants related to land use issues, and I represented the Department of Planning and Zoning as well as the Planning Board and the Board of Appeals in that capacity as the city attorney. So I bring that wealth of experience in dealing with zoning issues and land use issues from that position. I'm also an educator. I've been an adjunct professor at the University of Baltimore School of Law, as well as the Montgomery College teaching business law. I taught trial advocacy at University of Baltimore School of Law. I'm a trained certified mediator, so I'm involved, and I believe it's important for people to be able to resolve disputes, to have self-determination. I also understand the importance of having neutral people facilitating and or making decisions in different cases, as the case may be, whether it's a quasi-judicial body or as a mediator, and facilitating the resolution of disputes. I'm also a trained collaborative lawyer. So as an attorney, I'm interested in problem solving and not just arguing for the sake of arguing, and I appreciate the ability to help parties resolve their disputes and solve problems that they might be confronted with in their daily lives in addressing these land use issues. I'm a past president of the Bar Association of Montgomery County, and in that capacity, I developed a program called Creating an Improved Tomorrow, where we addressed racial and equity issues, as well as different legal issues as it relates to young people in our community, bringing judges, lawyers, and legislators to high schools, and in a program where we had exercises that the students participated in addressing and focusing on the law and facts and our society that will help them be leaders in the future in dealing with legal issues. And finally, I began my legal career as a judicial law clerk to Judge John Mitchell in the Circuit Court for Montgomery County, and the importance of the rule of law and ensuring a fair and neutral and detached hearing authority was one of the first and most important lessons that I learned, and how to implement that. And I want to continue to convey that and participate in that process as a member of the Board of Appeals.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
You talked about being a trained mediator. Can you tell us a time when you've helped reach consensus among a group?
Sure. Well, I'll begin by saying that I'm a past recipient of the Maryland Judiciary's Mediator of the Year Award in mediating disputes in the district court. I've also mediated disputes in the circuit court, as well as in the Orphans Court in Prince George's County. There have been several or numerous times where I've helped facilitate the resolution of disputes among people who might have competing interests. I sort of to lob on to a discussion item that you had with the previous interviewee. I was past counsel to the Commission and Office on Common Ownership Communities for 12 years when I was with the County Attorney's Office. And in that role, I saw many instances where either the board members had different agendas that had to be, I guess the best way of approached in a delicate way in order to make sure that everybody's interests were met in a collaborative way, so that nobody felt like they couldn't save face. And as the unit leader for the Office of the County Attorney's Contract, Commercial, and Procurement Unit, there were many times as a manager that I dealt with employment kind of issues with different members of my team, and making sure that everybody was in a position to handle situations and cases in a professional manner, and again, feeling as if they were heard, and that they, whether they liked or disliked or were neutral on the final outcome, they understood the outcome was for the benefit of the team. As the city attorney for the city of Annapolis, I was the director of the Office of Law and dealt with different employment and personnel issues that arose in the office, and served in a quasi-mediator kind of capacity on several occasions to address different conflicts between the personnel in that office. And also in that same role, there were times when different council members had different agendas. I know that's not possible with this county council. And so working with those different city council members and the mayor and the city manager, and addressing the different political or legal issues, which sometimes blended a bit. There were a couple situations where I was asked to render a legal opinion for issues that were either political and legal, and I needed to address those issues with communication, cooperation, and collaboration, with an understanding of what the different stakeholders were thinking and what their different agendas were, so that we could reach an outcome where I could provide a legal opinion that was true to what the law required or authorized, while also allowing the city council members or the mayor or the city manager to save face and to be able to have their agendas and their broader agendas being met, so that they could continue to operate at the maximum abilities in their position. So
Thank you for plenty of examples. I appreciate that. Next question is about how the Board of Appeals works and serves our community. Can you briefly share what you've learned about how that interacts during your time?
Absolutely. Well, my understanding, and I've lived through the understandings of the different types of cases that the board hears. Zoning matters, including a lot of variances, conditional use cases, minor modifications, and also hearing appeals from the decisions of certain administrative agencies in the county. And in dealing with, there's a case, the Cromwell decision, that outlines the legal requirements in order to obtain a variance that we we make sure that we educate the participants in the hearings as to what those factors are that have to be proven. Some come more prepared than others in understanding what those different factors are, but as part of the educational function, which is an important part of the role of a Board of Appeals member, we do make sure that we outline for the participants what those factors are. Similarly, where we hear conditional use cases, which used to be called special exception cases, we make clear what the different legal parameters are and what our legal authority is in making decisions. And I don't want to belabor the point of the importance of providing due process, providing fairness, making all people feel heard and on equal footing in the process is very important, and educating the participants, especially if they might be from groups that might have been historically discriminated against or otherwise placed in roles that created discomfort, to make sure that everybody is welcome at these hearings and that they are understood to be heard, and that the facts are heard and the law is applied in a fair and equitable manner.
Thank you. Will you be able to make the time commitment to serve on the board?
Absolutely, and I've exhibited that in my 2 3/4 years in participating, and will continue to do so.
As noted, absolutely. If appointed, and you just alluded to this in your previous response, how will you work on racial equity and social justice issues?
In the daily participation as a board member, obviously making the participants feel and know that they are being treated in an equal manner, always considering in the back of your mind that there are diversity, equity, and inclusion issues that are very important to address both at a conscious and subconscious and subliminal level in our society, and to ensure that we educate those that might not otherwise understand the process or the laws to which the facts apply in the case, so that they know that they're being treated in an equitable and fair way. Also, allowing this position to be a platform for identifying laws or regulations that might further facilitate inclusion, equity, and diversity in terms of massaging or improving the zoning laws, fair housing laws, or the processes that the Board of Appeals administers in rendering and hearing its decisions.
Thank you. Last question from me. Are there any potential conflicts of interest that we should be aware of?
I do not have any conflicts of interest that I'm aware of. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Luedtke has a question.
First off, I just want to thank you for your current service, and obviously I know you've had a very lengthy and full, robust legal career.
Thank you.
And so you've talked about the importance, and I know you've worn many hats in that legal career. So sometimes it's counseling an internal body, and sometimes it's being an advocate for a client, and sometimes it's serving in this capacity, right, on the Board of Appeals. But and I appreciate your comments about the need to, if there is something that you're observing in that role that needs to be changed, to elevate it. But could you talk a little bit about the importance of not judicially legislating?
The importance of not judicially legislating. Well, I'm very familiar, and I teach my business law students the separation of powers, and I've examined different Supreme Court cases where there are issues that go to the Supreme Court or courts of appeals, or even that might be heard by trial level courts related to what is common law precedent and stare decisis, and what is a statute that is being applied by a judicial body in analyzing the facts of a case versus legislating. Versus where's the line drawn between being progressive in furthering our common law to meet the different societal circumstances versus the purview of the legislature in drafting or amending a law to meet those different societal needs or changes. So in terms applying that to the role as a Board of Appeals member, I would and have and will apply the law as it is written. I will not legislate by reading into the law things that are not stated in the law. And I think that's an important function of being a Board of Appeals member.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stare decisis, said from the dais. There we go. Mr. Melnick, thank you very much for your previous service and your interest to continue that service. You are the only nominee that we have here for this position, and we will consider what you've shared with us, and we'll get back to you very soon.
Thank you. I appreciate your consideration and your time this morning, and congratulations again to all of you.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Next up, we're going to have a state legislative session with our Office of Intergovernmental Relations. If you all can come to the table. Good morning. Ms. McCartney Green, you kicking us off today?
Yes, is it still good morning or good afternoon? Are we?
We're still morning.
Okay, right. Thank you, Council President Glass, and congratulations on your new appointment. Good afternoon, good morning, returning council members, and congratulations and welcome to the new council members that are here with us today. Today for our state legislative session, the council will review and take positions on a few local bills that we have prepared for you in our packet. Before I start, I do want to give some background. The prior council, or the 19th council, met last week and had a briefing on 15 local and bi-county bills. And the briefing considered the briefing included just a discussion. The council did not take a position on the bills at the time. That's what will happen today. Of the 15 bills that were reviewed, only the bills with a hearing date that has a December 8th, that's upcoming for the delegation this coming Thursday, will be reviewed today. The remaining bills that have a hearing date scheduled for December 15th will be reviewed by the council next week. With that being said, in your packet for today, there is a legislative chart. And that chart provides council staff notes and recommendation for each bill. In addition, OIR, Ms. Melanie Wegner, who's here with me, and her staff have prepared a memo that's also in your packet that provides a little bit more description of each bill. Lastly, I want to remind the council that voting on each bill does not require a roll call vote. It's a hand vote. The positions are support with amendments, oppose, hold, or more information. I will begin, and Ms. Wellings will jump in and handle the latter part of the bills in the chart. If there's no questions, I'm happy to start with Circle 1, Bill MC 1523.
Mr. President, could you just lower your, that's the weaker mic, just put it down.
Is it? I'm
there
sorry.
You go, there you go.
Is that better? Okay, sorry. Do I need to repeat anything?
No, I think.
Okay.
Oh, and just.
We've heard enough.
Okay. And just to add on for just a moment, and thank you and good morning and congratulations to all the council members. Just to note, especially for the new council members, you're certainly not required to take any positions on these bills, and to the extent that you have further questions for staff, we are happy to go back and provide you with any further information that you need to make an informed decision. Also, I don't know if before Ms. McCartney Green starts, if Mel, if you want to introduce yourself and your team.
Again, congratulations to everyone. And this is my team to the left of me. I'm Melanie Winger. I'm the director of the Montgomery County Office of Intergovernmental Relations. This is Kathleen Boucher, Sarah Morningstar, and Leslie Fry. I'm going to go from the back first. Leslie actually resides with the Health and Human Services Department, but she works with us on state and federal issues, so we consider her a major part of our team, even though she doesn't, she's not officially assigned to the Office of Intergovernmental Relations. So she does cover health and human services issues. Sarah Morningstar is our federal coordinator, and she also picks up a couple of issues on the state side, including public safety and Vision Zero related issues. Kathleen Boucher. Kathleen is covers a lot of territory, is what I'll just describe. Doing tax work, bi-county commissions, pre-K through 16. What am I missing?
Elections, labor and employment relations.
Elections, police reform related issues.
Yeah.
And then Kathleen and I kind of work. I also pick up a portfolio of issues, and sometimes we'll work together, and sometimes we'll do something separately. But we're picking up kind of the larger share of the stateside issues, with Sarah primarily federal, with some stateside issues, and Leslie largely just housing and Health and Human Services, and now she picks up the housing portfolio too. So that's us.
Welcome. I'm glad you did the introductions. And just for context for my colleagues, I remember 4 years ago, those of us who were just new on this day came in, and we had lots of conversations about having to make decisions on the very first day. And so I believe everybody has been provided this information in advance. And going back to the point of always refining and being a better body, this is part of that process. And so as we go through, particularly the state legislative process, if you see things or hear things that could be tweaked or refined, take a note and let's talk afterwards. So with that, Ms. McCartney Green.
Thank you. And also wanted to note that some of our legislative analysts is in the room today. So if there's questions, they're happy to join us at the table to answer those as well. With that, we'll start with Circle 1 in our chart, MC 1523. That's the Village of Friendship Heights Special Taxing District Procurement Bill. So the bill would raise from $5,000 to $20,000 a threshold for competitive bidding that must occur for a procurement of Village of Friendship Heights. The bill would also allow the Village Council to forego competitive bidding if the Village Council finds that the procurement is in response to an emergency. Council staff has reviewed this, and the recommendation here for Council to support MC 1523. Do know that here also in the packet too, the county executive position is stated as in support as well.
Any comments or objections? Not hearing any?
Page 2 of your packet, MC 623. This is the speed monitoring system on authorized highway. This would it's enabling legislation that would authorize the county to place speed camera monitoring systems on roadways or highways that are 40 or 45 miles per hour. And so this bill aligns with the county's priority on pedestrian safety and is supported by MCPD. I do note that Councilmember Jawando did have a request to look at the data of how many other roads that would be impacted if this bill was adopted. And at the time, DOT is still reviewing that and putting together a chart, but was not able to turn it over. I am going to defer to Dr. Orland if that is a dated update.
Yeah, now, they are working on the map, Mr. Jawando, and I saw a draft of it this morning. I can tell you a few of the roads that would come under this law that don't come under it now, just as an example. One is, for example, Democracy Boulevard, west of Westfield, Montgomery, over to Falls Road. Another is Montrose Road, which is between Seven Locks Road and Falls Road, again, the western portion of it. The upper section of New Hampshire Avenue, the upper section of Georgia Avenue. There are probably at least a dozen roads that have speed limits of 40, 45 miles per hour posted, which would come under this bill, which would allow speed cameras.
Okay, well, is that it for this?
Yeah, and just to clarify, this would not only be applicable just for residential, but all highways. Just make sure that's clear.
That's right. I'm sorry. Yes, in commercial areas now where there's any speed limit up to 45 miles per hour would come under that. There's not a lot of that, obviously, in business districts because the speed limit's there usually 25 or 30 or even lower. But in some of the further out areas, such as in White Flint and sometimes in Shady Grove area, there may be speed limits that are higher than that, where speed cameras could be allowed.
I remember when we were talking about this last week. the information that MCPD was in fact supportive of this legislation, enabling legislation, really important. And Dr. Orland, thank you for providing the information that Councilmember Jawando had requested and enumerating some of those locations. Clearly, we know that many of those roads are just like highways, which is why for me, this legislation is really important, because if we really are committed to Vision Zero and making our streets safe, we need some automatic mechanisms to help make them safe. Comments from anybody? Councilmember Jawando?
I tried the new thing. I don't know if it worked, but
It didn't work.
Okay. All right. So, all right. Thank you, Dr. Orland. Thank you, Mr. McCartney Green. And that was exactly why I wanted the map. I think it's just as important to say like where these places are that are functioning as highways, so we can have this authority. I think it's a very important bill. Look forward to publicizing and our friends in the media and otherwise in us promoting this change. Hopefully, if it can take place in Annapolis and we can get some of these on these roads to slow people down on what are functional highways that are very dangerous for our pedestrians. So I just think we should support it and look forward to seeing the final map. But thank you, that was helpful. Thank you, Mr. President.
Not hearing any other objection, we support.
Moving along to MC 823, that's speed monitoring systems on Maryland 200. And so while the council has made it clear that speed cameras does make sense in the ICC, some of the concern was the mandating and the monitoring of it. I do know that Dr. Orland is here and also Susan Farag, who can provide some comments that they have, that they gathered from MCPD and DOT as well.
Yeah, we just wanted some more information on this. We don't have any objection, of course, to have speed monitoring on the ICC. The question really is who's responsible for putting in those cameras, paying for it, who gets the revenue? These are fairly unanswered questions at this point. So,
I believe the District 7 council member who encompasses most of the ICC would like to ask a question. Ms. Ludke.
Yes, she sure does. So, obviously, placing speed cameras on the ICC is something that is desired by a large swath of the residents in my district to mitigate the issues, the ongoing issues that are happening there. While I understand the language within the proposed legislation mandates the creation of an MOU, which would figure out the nuts and bolts of the operationalizing this and addressing presumably those issues related to cost and payment and so on and so forth. And my understanding from the prior hearing on this and discussion on this amongst the council members is that folks generally favor this, as I do. I do have concerns, however, that the way this bill is drafted changes and creates a distinction that removes from the local government the authority to authorize that. Because if as a body we are in consensus over that and we say, this is great, let's do that, let's work with the Department of Transportation, let's do the MOU to figure out the nuts and bolts, we can already do that, and we can do that, and if the state's willing to move forward with that, we should. But we don't need a bill that chips away at the county's authority to do that and treats Montgomery County differently than anyone else. So those are my concerns.
Any other? Yeah, go ahead.
May I add just a couple of comments there too to follow up on Councilmember Lutke's
Ms. Farag, you want to introduce
comments.
yourself for all of our colleagues? Yeah.
Yes, okay. Susan Farag, legislative analyst. I handle most of the public safety departments, including police. And I have been in contact with the police department about this. There's a little bit of a concern about one term within this draft bill dealing with mobile cameras. The department defines mobile cameras as being in a van or some sort of vehicle, and they're concerned that that would cause its own type of safety hazard on the ICC. So they would like to see that changed, and I don't know what their term is for those fixed post cameras that they have that look like little robots on the side of the road. Ideally, they would prefer to have cameras mounted on the gantries above, and I don't know the details of how that would be worked out with the state. My other concern operationally just is to note that there is a significant staff shortage within the department. They're down about 8% of their sworn staff and almost 15% of their civilian staff. This is predominantly conducted by civilian staff within the department, but I just wanted to put it out there as something that may cause some concerns or possibly delays in implementation.
So moving forward, so if that is the request to what, either remove the mobile vans, or is it to modify in some other way?
Definitely to get rid of the mobile van language and whatever the proper term is for a fixed type of camera.
Okay, seems sensible to me.
Right, it probably fits within the definition that's there. And also there's a couple of other technical flaws that need to be dealt with, but not
Got it,
worth
right.
a lot,
And the
not
chair of
worth
the
a lot
Public
of
Safety
time,
Committee is
wasting a lot of
nodding.
time here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is with that amendment or request for change, we're in agreement and move forward with that without objection, or Councilmember
Yeah,
Jawando?
I thought we were holding, just because of
Oh,
the
got it.
financing
We need to hold.
and
That's
the-
it. Yep.
There's a lot of
Sorry.
other issues.
Thank you. Council Vice President?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. There's a hearing on December 8th. I'm just wondering if, rather than holding the council, I think what you were getting at is the council formally, or informally expressing its views in some form of correspondence related to the police department's questions and that amendment, but also, the fundamental aspect of the way that this is presented is a mandate. And I think that's what the district council member was noting, some concerns with that. So I think there are some fairly fundamental details that need to be addressed, and I think it would be preferable if we could send them before the December 8th hearing so that the delegation would have the benefit of it before they meet.
Yeah,
Councilmember Jawando?
would that take the, sure, yeah, I think giving feedback is good. I mean, they're gonna, you all will take some of this back, but whether we formally or informally say, we have some questions, several have been raised in different areas, mandate, how would the funding be used, fixed, non-fixed? I mean, so I think it'd be hard to say support, other than we want to slow people down on the ICC, but the details of this matter a lot. So however we say that.
And so going back to how I started this conversation, we have evolved in the way we do state legislation, and as of this moment in time, 4 options that are presented to us are support legislation, oppose legislation, have no opinion on legislation, and the 4th is request more information, and quite possibly that's the vehicle that we're using, no pun intended, to make sure that these considerations are included in the legislation, correct? Ms. Wenger?
So we would write a position statement for this, and we can incorporate all of those thoughts in that, which, because particularly for the local bill hearings, I think sometimes it is important to provide greater context on occasion than just support, oppose. And we'd be glad to incorporate these comments in that document. And also, I'm certainly glad to communicate with the sponsor the concerns in advance of that position statement becoming public.
Councilmember Lutke?
So one of the things I wanted to be really clear on is, so on page 3, line 2, lines 2 and 3, the print in bold that was added would need to be deleted, would need to be removed. That should not be part of this if it is to go forward. And same with lines 6, 7, and 8 on page 3 would need to go. There would need to be modifications based thereon to lines 9 through 13, because it assumes that they've already made the decision, and would require language that upon our decision making, then that would be operationalized to create that MOU and figure out and put in the types of devices and the payment and figure that all out subsequently. But those earlier pieces are the pieces that are the point of consternation.
Councilmember Malcolm?
Figure out what we're supposed to be doing here.
So state ledge is a little more free flow.
Okay.
And so just get my attention.
So I just wanted to clarify, so what happens if the county executive supports a bill and we don't support a bill? How does it work functionality? Do we submit our own?
So that is a good question. And I will say 4 years ago, we entered this question for conversation, and correct me if I'm wrong, colleagues and staff, but what we determined that is if there is a disagreement between the executive and legislative branch, the council, then the department could not advocate for or against it. Is that correct?
That is correct, but because it's important, I think, for our delegation to know those different positions and to also have something in front of them that I think in an unbiased way describes the piece of legislation, this is the one time that we would go ahead and put in a statement and reflect that there are different positions and why. But when it comes to Annapolis, this team would not be advocating for either side.
Mm-hmm. And who drafts the statement and who approves the statement?
We draft the statement.
And do we see it at all? Or
Ms. McCartney Green.
Councilmember Malcolm, you have the opportunity to review it if after OIR is provided.
Yeah.
We can share it with the council members.
yeah, I'm just curious as
Yeah.
the process because we're talking about the 8th, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
And what this process, this is an informal vetting, right? And so everyone's sharing their concerns or expressing their support. It's the notes are being written down, and it will be sent back to us.
Thank you.
So what I'm hearing is that there is support for the roadmap that Councilmember Luedke had provided, and that would be presented to the delegation. Is there support for that? Okay. Very good.
Page 4, looking at MC 123. This bill would require the fines collected by the county as a result of the school bus monitoring camera violations on state highways for those funds to be remitted to the state. The funds would also be used to enhance pedestrian safety at the site of the violation. Council staff does have some concerns with the fact that discretionary revenue that would usually be reserved for the county use would actually be foregone to the state. At this point, we'd like to hold and request more information to understand the impact of the funds that will be earmarked for the state and how the funds deferred to the state would improve pedestrian safety enhancements. There's not data related to the one-on-one correlation that the accident happens at the site is the area that needs to be improved. And so those are some of the information or questions that we have. I know Ms. McGuire might be here, if not to
She's
provide
behind you.
more information if needed.
Great. So I'll kick off the conversation by saying that the school bus camera program is a really important one to keep our kids safe. And that's why we've adopted it, and that's why the fines have increased. So our friends in the General Assembly, required a few years ago. But the program has some problems to it. Most notably, I've been working with Delegate Moon, one of the sponsors of this legislation, to try and determine why some people are being ticketed, particularly when we have a 6-lane road without a median, and it is rush hour, and a bus is stopping on, saying, going northbound, and there's someone in the far opposite lane going southbound and does not even see the bus, but is ticketed, and there are some problems with the system. And so I share that because I think there needs to be refinement to the system before money starts being allocated to areas where there might or might not be spot treatment available. And so what I would prefer is if we get more information, and it looks like the county executive says review pending. I don't know if that's more information as well, but I think we need to dive a little deeper to figure out how to make this program even better so that we make sure all of our kids are safer. With that, do you have any response? You're good? Okay. Councilmember Albornoz.
Thank you, Mr. President. And just for the benefit of my incoming colleagues, we held a joint Public Safety and Education and Culture Committee session when the school bus monitoring system was first being considered, and then had an update a little over a year ago. And the images that are shown of the near misses will take your breath away. And so I completely concur with the Council President's statement that we need to refine the program and take whatever improvements there are to the technology into account. But the fact remains that, unfortunately, there are too many close calls to count, and there has been a record number of fines set. And so I concur with the staff recommendation to hold off until we have more information, but this is one of 1,000 examples of where we do need to collaborate more with our state partners, DOT, as well as state highways, because there's probably a better solution to working collaboratively to address some of those fundamental engineering issues that may be causing the problem in the first place. And that's not something that this body can manage. It has to be done at the executive level, but it is something we can monitor. And I do think, and I'd like to humbly request my colleagues, both in Education and Culture and Public Safety, that we have a joint committee session again to follow up on the Council President's recommendation, because there's no time to waste here. This is a very important issue.
probably hop in that joint committee myself. Councilmember Friedson, then Chair of Public Safety, Council Vice President Friedson, and then Chair of the Public Safety Committee, Councilmember Katz.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's a really important issue. Obviously, pedestrian safety is important for everybody, but it's particularly important for our most vulnerable, youngest children. And there have been serious collisions and fatalities, including a couple in my district, and it's a devastating situation. And so the school bus camera program is a really important tool to keeping our students, our young people, safe. But this bill has some challenges, I agree, and I think we need to, like the last bill, communicate those concerns, including the fact that we're giving up revenue to the state, which frankly, while we have made progress in recent years, does not do as good a job as we would like on advancing pedestrian safety improvements. We have made major headway on that, but not nearly as much as we would like. So I have real concerns about the idea that we would be foregoing the revenue that we could be implementing here. And then, operationally, it's just not practicable frequently to utilize, a couple $100, on an individual violation at an individual site to make meaningful pedestrian safety improvements that can cost hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. And so, I really appreciate the work that delegates Moon and Love are trying to do here, but I think there are some real concerns and challenges, both from an operational standpoint of how do you spend a few $100s here and a few $100s there and actually make a meaningful impact, and also philosophical concerns with the idea that the county would be giving up significant amounts of revenue potentially to the state in order to implement the solutions that we have to literally beg the state frequently to make, where we are in much better position more often than not to make meaningful and immediate improvements that are urgently needed to keep people safe. So, I appreciate the fact that we're holding off on more information here, but I think at a high level, at the very least, we need to communicate those concerns to the sponsors in the interest of working collaboratively with them on what I think is a shared interest and goal here. And I think the joint committee session as a follow-up to prior joint committee sessions is a good idea, and I think we can communicate that to our state partners as well.
Thank you. Councilmember Katz.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Just as a note, the chair of the Education Committee and I have already collaborated that we will be having that session. It's one thing sitting next to people. The other thing is I agree that we should be holding this whole idea that it would be at the site of the violation. Well, people are pedestrians. They don't just stand at that site. If they're walking to that site, then we might need the funds to be used for those pedestrians that are walking to that site where the concern took place. And in addition to, and Council Vice President made the point, we need to make certain what are the dollars needed to correct this. We shouldn't be just using these funds to correct a safety issue for pedestrians, especially when it's school-aged children. So I think holding is important, but I do believe we need to figure out what's the best way to move forward on this, and we should do it as quickly as we can. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilmember Jawando.
I think Councilmember Stewart was in front of me, so you want me to go? Okay, all right. So I agree with what's been said, in particular, Council Vice President's point that, it has been very hard in my experience to get the state, and I'm really looking forward to the Moore Miller administration, but to get the state just because of capacity and other reasons, or just level of understanding of what's happening on the ground, to respond to county level issues. This would be such a small amount of money potentially, but if you take it on the aggregate to the count for that individual site, but if you took it on the aggregate to the county's budget, it could be a large amount of money. So for both reasons, I think we're much better positioned. And while we should absolutely, and Council Member Katz, we definitely will have that joint session. We should do that. I think that I don't think that would change the fundamental answer to the question of whether we should send the money back to Annapolis. I'd be comfortable saying that now. But while I do think we should talk about the program, we want people to err on the side of caution here, right? You know, we've seen those videos. If you see a school bus that's getting ready to stop or about to stop, we want people to stop. And while we can refine the program, and we should, it's a lot of these are intersections with county roads, you know, and so how would that even work if you where's the improvement? And so I just think we're in a much better position to work with the state to figure that out and to have them partner with us on that. So I'd be comfortable saying that now and not supporting it. When is the hearing? When's this? Thursday. Is this Thursday as well? These are all local bills. That's why we're taking them up. They're all Thursday hearings.
Right.
Okay. So I would see what other colleagues think, but I don't think that fundamental thing is going to change. You know. So yeah. So I just suggest that.
And I appreciate that. And you know. Those concerns I think are real. My concern would be if we said that we oppose it ends the conversation, and that at least if we say that we have some reservations or we want more information, then we can thoughtfully try to work through it. And if there are fundamental disagreements about where the money should go, then we can make a decision based on that. But I think there are secondary and tertiary questions that we all have that we're trying to vet. Let me share with my colleagues as we continue refining our processes. I said this was a little more free-flowing. It's a little more free than maybe I would like it to be. So as you see a conversation that a lot of people want to engage in, please send me a message so we can get it in the queue.
Thank you. So first, I want to agree with my colleagues. This is a very important program, and I'm glad it's in place. And thank Council President Glass for working with Delegate Moon on looking at those areas where there is no median. In particular, I believe many of them are in my district. I think the top three are Piney Branch, East West Highway, and Colesville. I also believe that the tickets are $250 each. And I guess one question I would have is, are we really talking about hundreds of dollars, or in these particularly in these locations, are we getting close to almost $500,000 to $1 million in tickets? And so I think that was one of the concerns that had been raised by Delegate Moon, is that there actually is a significant amount of money and questions about how that is being spent and how it has been spent before. And before I turn it over, you just to agree with my colleague, I agree that we should continue to ask questions, but even as we're asking those questions, I see no reason in turning the money back to the state. So, thank you.
Julie,
Okay.
just one quick comment.
Yeah, Ms. Wagner.
So Wade Holland with Vision Zero is here with us today, but some of these things could be answered at a later time in the interest of time. But this piece of legislation is actually a follow-up to a piece of legislation that did pass last year that started this discussion, and started also with the school system, which is an important player here. And so that bill passed, and it does require the county to produce several reports, of which the first report is due the end of this year, and it will reveal some information about the opposite lane issues and some more in-depth information that I think will be useful for this conversation and useful to the delegate in the area where this has happened.
Yeah, I think if we do provide any testimony or anything, knowing that report is forthcoming would be very helpful.
Very good. Thank you for that information. Councilmember Mink.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to, in regards to whether we want to remit money to the state, I completely agree that we're always asking them to make these fixes, and that's a headache that we don't want to increase. At the same time, we're often asking them to spend money on state roads, and so I'm wondering if this is an effort by Delegate Moon and co to really force them to spend that money that we want them to spend on state roads. That said, this is money that I would also like to be county money, and we have county roads that we would like to spend them on. And if I recall, didn't Delegate Charkoudian spearhead a bill that would have required a minimum spend by Shaw on some of these Vision Zero type improvements? And last session, I want to say, I apologize, I don't have the bill number on hand, but I could look it up. And is that something that's coming back this year, because that would help address that would help to force them to spend money on those roads we want them to spend them on? And then also the question of, if there was an option of saying may, that the funds may be remitted. So if we wanted to say we would like these funds to be spent on that state road, and we would like to force the state to spend the money on the state roads, but it would leave the power with us and give us the discretion of whether we want to keep that money and use it for county roads, or to get the state to spend it on some of those state roads.
I think it's an excellent observation. Councilmember Lutke.
To Councilmember Mink's point, and asking about whether it could be a may, we could already do that collaboration in terms of taking our county money. So we don't even need to put it there to say a may, because we can already. And so, my question was, are they trying to fix something that they perceived as an issue where they thought the county was collecting the funds and they weren't being allocated to fixing transportation problems? And if so, isn't that the county's responsibility to mitigate and fix that, not for the state to then take the funds and repurpose them?
Can we make them spend it on the state roads?
Well, so we're venturing into political philosophical questions about who should be paying for what, and that is germane in this conversation, absolutely. And I appreciate the way it was brought up by Councilmember Mink. And so I guess I would say, in conclusion of this conversation, we request this information. We have individual conversations with Delegate Charkoudian, Delegate Moon, who, all of these individuals share that we have a common goal of making all of these places safer and trying to figure out what the best mechanism for that is. Is that a consensus I'm hearing? Is that one that you can provide to the delegation?
Yeah, again, just like the other bill, we can write some context for why you're holding the bill.
Yes.
Okay.
And then we'll get more information from Mr. Holland later this year or early next year. Yeah.
And just, I think we should also put in there that the chairs of Education, Culture, and Public Safety, we're going to have a follow-up discussion on the underlying issues.
Yes. Excellent.
Ms. Wellens is going to walk you through the remainder of the chart.
Thank you, Mr. Council President and council members. I'm on what we call Circle 5 for our new council members if they're not used to our terminology, but we're on page 5 of the chart. And we have the next three bills I will describe in tandem, if that's okay with the council president. They all relate to alcohol beverage services. They have been requested by Alcohol Beverage Services, and they all three are supported by the county executive, and council staff also would recommend support of these bills. They are fairly administrative in nature. MC 4-23 would allow the police chief and the director of Alcohol Beverage Services to send designees to the Alcohol Beverage Services Advisory Board. The Bill 5-23, MC 5-23, would remove a requirement that not more than 3 members of the Board of License Commissioners be members of the same political party. At the same time, it would require the county executive, when making appointments to this board, to consider the need for geographic, political, racial, ethnic, and gender diversity. And council staff notes that we believe this would be consistent with the council's stated racial equity goals and improving diversity of commissions. And MC 16-23 is a bill that, if you have specific questions, I may defer to my friends at OIR, but essentially it would allow the Montgomery County Revenue Authority to hold multiple licenses, a clubhouse license, and I believe a microbrewery license. And this would, in part, facilitate the Crossvines project located at the Poolsville Golf Course. And this is also a follow-up to General Assembly, to law that was passed by the General Assembly last year along these same lines. And this was essentially a cleanup measure, if that's correct.
It's just correcting an oversight whereby the Revenue Authority would not have the ability to hold these two types of licenses at the same time. They're unique, and it was just an oversight in the state statute when a new type of liquor license was approved last year.
Very good. Thank you for that explanation. Any comments, questions? Not hearing any, will support without objection.
Thank you, Council President Glass. The final bill for your state bill for your consideration today is MC 13-23, and we're on Circle 7 of the staff packet. This bill is a little bit complicated. It relates to collective bargaining practices at the sheriff's office, which, as we know, is part of the state judicial branch. The sheriff-elect submitted concerns to the county executive. A copy of his letter appears in your packet, at the end of your packet, starting on Circle 15. The sheriff-elect expressed some concerns about the legality of the bill under the state constitution's separation of powers doctrine. I would like for council staff to further coordinate with the Office of the County Attorney to kind of better flesh out any legal concerns for you. But in addition, council staff has reached out to McGeo to ask if they have comments that they would like communicated to the council about this bill. So the recommendation is hold at this time. And my understanding is the county executive has no position at this time.
So the county executive has no position at the time, and staff recommendation is to hold pending further analysis. I think that sounds reasonable. Any objections? We'll support staff recommendation. And that is it.
That concludes the
There we
state
go.
bills for today.
Congratulations,
Thank
team.
you.
Your first state ledge session. And we are 1 minute early back on the agenda. See, that's how the magic happens. Thank you to my colleagues. Thank you all. Okay, and this one should be the easiest of the morning. We'll now move to the consent calendar. May I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Motion to move.
Moved by Council Member Albernaz and seconded by Council Member Katz. All those in favor, raise your hand. That is unanimous. Okay. And with that, we are done for this morning's business, and we'll go into recess until this afternoon. Thank you all very much. On time.